The moon cast a sickly glow over Rosewood Asylum, an imposing structure that loomed over the dense woods surrounding it. The institution had been abandoned for decades, left to decay and rot under the weight of countless tragic memories. Yet, on this night, the old asylum was not as empty as it seemed. John had always been fascinated by urban legends and haunted places, and Rosewood was reputedly one of the most haunted. Determined to prove his bravery to his friends, he decided to spend the night there. Armed with a flashlight, a backpack full of snacks, and a camera to document his adventure, John stepped through the broken gate and onto the cracked pathway leading to the entrance. The air grew colder as he approached, and a shiver ran down his spine. He hesitated for a moment before pushing open the heavy rusted door. The creak echoed through the empty halls, and John took a deep breath, reminding himself that the stories were just that, stories. As he explored the dilapidated asylum, John marveled at the peeling wallpaper, the broken furniture, and the eerie silence that seemed to press in on him from all sides. The place was a maze of dark corridors and abandoned rooms, each one more unsettling than the last. But it wasn't until he reached the children's ward that he felt a true sense of unease. The ward was small, with tiny beds lined up against the walls, most of them still with tattered sheets and old toys scattered about. John was about to leave when he heard a soft giggle coming from the corner of the room. He froze, his flashlight beam shaking slightly as he turned towards the sound. Sitting on one of the beds was a little girl, no older than 7. She wore a white dress that looked far too clean for a place like this, and her dark hair framed a face that was both innocent and unsettling. "Hello," she said in a sweet, sing-song voice. John swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Hi, what are you doing here?" "I live here," she replied simply, swinging her legs back and forth. "Who are you?" "My name's John. I'm just exploring." She smiled, but there was something off about it, something that made John's skin crawl. "Do you want to play with me?" she asked. Before he could respond, the lights flickered and John's flashlight died. Panic set in as the room plunged into darkness. He fumbled with the flashlight, trying to get it to work again, and when it finally did, the girl was gone. John tried to convince himself that he was imagining things, that his mind was playing tricks on him. But as he continued to explore, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every so often, he would hear that same soft giggle echoing through the halls and catch glimpses of the girl out of the corner of his eye. The asylum seemed to come alive around him. Shadows moved where there shouldn't have been any, and the air grew thick with a sense of dread. John's heart pounded in his chest as he wandered deeper into the building, unable to find his way back to the entrance. In a moment of sheer terror, he ran into a room and slammed the door behind him, breathing heavily. He realized he was in the old operating room, the rusted surgical tools still laid out on the table. The sight made his stomach turn, but he forced himself to stay calm. "John," a voice whispered, and he turned to see the girl standing in the corner of the room, her eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Leave me alone," he shouted, backing away. She tilted her head, her smile widening. "But I just want to play." John's fear turned to anger. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" The girl's expression darkened, and for the first time, John saw the true malevolence in her eyes. "You shouldn't have come here," she said coldly. "This is my home. "You're trespassing." John stumbled back, his mind racing. He remembered the stories about Rosewood, about the little girl who had died there under mysterious circumstances. Could it be her? Are you Lily?" he asked, his voice trembling. The girl's eyes flashed with recognition, and she nodded slowly. "Yes, that was my name. But now, I am something more. I am the darkness that haunts these halls, the spirit that will never rest." John turned and bolted from the room, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He could hear Lily's laughter echoing behind him, growing louder and more menacing. He sprinted down the hallways, desperately trying to find a way out, but the asylum seemed to conspire against him, leading him deeper into its labyrinthine depths. His flashlight flickered and died again, plunging him into darkness. John's hands fumbled against the walls, his only guide as he stumbled through the pitch-black corridors. He could feel her presence, drawing closer, and his fear turned to sheer panic. "John, come play with me," Lily's voice echoed around him, sounding as though it came from everywhere at once. He ran blindly, his fingers grazing against cold, damp walls. The building creaked and groaned, and he swore he could hear whispers in the dark. Finally, he burst into a room and slammed the door shut, leaning against it as he tried to catch his breath. The room was dimly lit by the moonlight streaming through a broken window. John looked around, realizing he was in the old therapy room. The sight of the decaying furniture and shattered mirrors did nothing to calm his nerves. Lily appeared in the center of the room, her form shimmering like a mirage. "You can't run from me, John," she said softly. "Why are you doing this?" he cried. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I'll leave, I promise." She shook her head slowly. "It's too late for that. You've seen me, and now you must stay. Forever." John's mind raced, trying to think of a way out. "There has to be a way to end this. Something I can do to set you free." Lily's eyes flickered with something that looked almost like sorrow. "You can't set me free. I am bound to this place. But perhaps you can join me." Before he could react, she lunged at him, her small hands ice cold as they wrapped around his throat. John struggled, gasping for breath, his vision blurring. He could feel her hatred, her despair, seeping into him, pulling him down into darkness. Desperation gave him strength, and John managed to break free, stumbling back. He spotted an old crucifix on the wall, tarnished but still recognizable. Grabbing it, he held it out towards Lily, his voice shaking as he spoke. "In the name of God, leave me alone." Lily recoiled, her form flickering like a dying flame. "No, you can't," she hissed, her voice distorted. John pressed forward, the crucifix held high. "Go back to where you came from. Leave this place." With a final, ear-piercing scream, Lily's form shattered, dissolving into the air. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting. John dropped to his knees, exhausted and shaken. As dawn's light began to filter through the broken windows, John made his way out of Rosewood Asylum. His clothes were torn, his body bruised, but he was alive. He didn't look back as he stumbled down the path and into the woods, the asylum shrinking behind him. He never spoke of what happened that night, not even to his friends. The stories about Rosewood continued to circulate, but John knew the truth. The asylum was haunted, and the spirit of Lily was real. He had barely escaped with his life, and he knew he would never forget the terror he had faced.
Ah!